Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod's IAS classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to discuss current affairs of 16th August 2021. So one thing I want to say here is many students commented that they are having some problem with my handwriting. So I came up with this approach today. So let me know your valuable suggestions in comment box. Okay, so don't forget about giving your comments in comment box. So in this lecture, we are going to discuss 6 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So first topic we are going to discuss about Taliban in Afghanistan. As you all know, like due to withdrawal of US troops in Afghanistan, whatever the vacuum which is created, that is mainly occupied by Taliban, and Taliban, they are raising their violence, and as well as they started occupying important cities. And recently they reached till Kabul, and in Kabul they said that they are not going to occupy this Kabul forcefully. They want peaceful transition of power. And regarding this article is in news, right? So this article will be important from GS paper 2 under international relations. And second topic, it is about judicial vacancies. So this article mainly saying that there is increasing of vacancies. Okay, there is increasing of vacancies in both High Court and as well as in Supreme Court. Even in Collegium also we can see some vacancies. So here this article saying that because of increase in vacancy, they are not going for adjudicating of important cases also. So regarding this article will be important regarding GS paper 2 under polity. And next one is Haiti earthquake. So recently Haiti news because of political turmoil. Okay, so recently we saw earthquake that happened at a high magnitude in Haiti that led to large amount of casualties. So this article will be important regarding GS paper 1 under geography. And next one is fatalities in India. So one question mainly asked, to that question minister replied with data regarding fatalities in India. So that article will be important regarding disaster management, which comes under GS paper 3. And next one is regarding Partition Horrors Remembrance Day. So yesterday's article we discussed some introduction regarding this Partition Horrors Remembrance Day. So here in this article we are going to see what is this and what is the concern regarding this day. This will be important from our governance point of view. And next one is India and the world. So this article mainly saying that what are the challenges we are facing in our foreign policy. Okay, so this article mainly talked from since history from 1947, what are the steps that are taken and what are the challenges we faced. So this article will be important regarding international relations, which comes from GS paper 2. So apart from this 6 articles, there are 2 articles which are important from your page number 6. So already we discussed that the first one here is regarding cooperative federalism and coercive federalism. So what is the difference between cooperative and coercive federalism? So cooperative federalism means there will be the proper functioning between a center and state, and there will be proper sharing of power, and the state and center will cooperate, okay, in their functioning. But in coercive federalism, so central will come up with some laws. Central is forcing to implement that laws on states. So that type of federalism is called as a coercive federalism. So this article mainly gave some example regarding Karnataka. Karnataka actually it was a revenue surplus state because of some laws, some acts which were implemented by center. So now that led to revenue deficit state. So that article mainly talked about some examples how revenue surplus state became revenue deficit state. So if you are from Karnataka state, that will be important for your state public service examinations and also even in your interview part. So if you want to read, you can read. So overall, you need to know what is cooperative federalism concept. That's it. And next article, which is also seen in page number 6. Okay, that article also we discussed regarding decreasing of 3 rupees per liter of petrol in Tamil Nadu. So already we discussed that article in day before yesterday's lecture. So we are not going to discuss that. So overall, so these are the 6 topics we are going to discuss in this lecture. So first, let us see first article. Title says Afghan President Ghani leaves country as Taliban reach Kabul. So Taliban reached Kabul. So here Ashraf Ghani, okay, President of Afghanistan, he resigned and he leaves the country. He left the country. So this is one important article, so which is important from our international relations. So if you say context, it mainly says that President Ashraf Ghani left Afghanistan joining his few citizens and foreigners in fleeing the advancing Taliban and signaling the end of 20-year Western experiment aimed at remarking the country. So what is the meaning of this? So as you all know, because of US troops and NATO troops, they left Afghanistan. So they created vacuum, and this vacuum mainly occupied by Taliban, and Taliban, they increased their force and they started occupying major cities like Herat and as well as Kandahar, etc. And recently they also approached or appeared in Kabul. So because of this, here Afghanistan government, that is Ashraf Ghani president, he resigned and he left Afghanistan, right? So this is context. And if you see some images, I took these images from other newspapers like India Today and as well as BBC. So here this image mainly saying that district-wise mapping of Taliban's advances in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan occupied Herat, Kandahar. Earlier Kandahar was mainly the major site of Taliban. So because of this US troops which entered Afghanistan, so US troops mainly tried to depress this Taliban in this Kandahar, and they successfully did that. And again last 2 days back, so this Kandahar mainly come into control of Talibans. So most of the country which is under control of a Taliban here. So red color area which is under control of a Taliban. So another image which mainly showing map of Afghanistan with boundary countries. So I chose this image mainly to show which are the countries sharing boundary with Afghanistan. So here we have Iran, here we have Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and Pakistan. Okay, so which are the countries sharing boundary with Afghanistan? Here India is also present, but here it is mainly sharing boundary at Pak occupied Kashmir. It is now under administration or control of Pakistan. So countries which are sharing boundary with Afghanistan include Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and Pakistan. So if you're talking about distance, okay, distance between Delhi, that is capital of India, and Kabul, it is capital of Afghanistan, which is very much less. It is just 1,000, more than just, it is less than 1100 kilometers. Okay, so now let us try to understand how Taliban got control and how these Taliban revived. So this part will be important from your mains. Then you need to understand what is the phenomena, what happened. So why US intervened. So as you all know, after this 9/11 attacks, okay, so after this 9/11 attacks, US intervention that is seen. After 20 years of US interventions, so there was thousands of deaths and at least $1 trillion rupees of spending. The Taliban's advance in country has been striking swift. So here's a look back how the situation evolved to where it stands today. So now let us try to understand how Taliban got control over Afghanistan. So what happened after this 9/11 terror attacks? So American and as well as allied forces, they began invasion Afghanistan. So they came up with one operation. So name of that operation is Operation Enduring Freedom. So this operation mainly aimed at to stop Taliban from providing a safe havens to Al-Qaeda, and even to stop Al-Qaeda use of Afghanistan as a base of operations for terrorist activities. So actually this Al-Qaeda people, they are using this Afghanistan as a base and they are conducting some terrorist activities. So because of this Operation Enduring Freedom, which come up by US and some allied forces, and here important aim of this Operation Enduring Freedom was to provide or to stop or to prevent Taliban to provide a safe havens to Al-Qaeda's and as well as Al-Qaeda's using of this Afghanistan land to come up with some terrorist activities or terrorist organization or terrorist activities. So on December 7, 2011, Taliban lost its major stronghold as city of Kandahar fell. So this city of Kandahar, it was one of important site where this Taliban's mainly raised. Okay. So what happened because of this Operation Enduring Freedom? So on December 7th, 2001, Taliban lost major stronghold in this area. So later on, what happened? Later on, in recent January 2017, Taliban sent an open letter to US President at that time, that is Donald Trump. Mainly, these Taliban called him to withdraw US troops from the country. So between 2017 to 2019, there were some attempts that are made regarding peace talks between US and Taliban. And finally, they come up with agreement. So the name of that agreement is Doha Agreement. And in this historic agreement, which signed in February 2020, so here in this agreement, some important provisions include agreement to bring peace to Afghanistan. So this can be done mainly US need to decrease their troop levels, or US need to withdraw their troops. And even there is a need for permanent and as well as comprehensive ceasefire. So here this agreement mainly focusing on to bringing peace to Afghanistan. And here in return to bring peace, here US troops, they need to be withdrawn from Afghanistan. And here mainly intra-Afghan dialogue, which mainly aimed to bring a permanent comprehensive ceasefire in this region. So later on, Loya Jirga, that is the Assembly of Elders, they also passed a resolution that said that they are going to leave, or they are going to release 5,000 Talibans. And according to this, around 400 Talibans were released. And later on in March 2021, Afghan president and Biden administration, they proposed mainly for interim power sharing agreement between Taliban and Afghanistan government. And in April 2001, President Biden announced that US would withdraw forces from Afghanistan by September 2021. So it mainly marks 20th anniversary. And next one is on August 15th, yesterday. So Taliban mainly seized control over major cities across Afghanistan, apart from Kabul, but also they reached Kabul also. And now Taliban mainly want to share power. And recently what happened, Afghanistan president, that is Ashraf Ghani, resigned, and temporarily the head of Taliban have given this president power now. So this is about gist of this topic. I hope it is clear. And now let us see next topic. Title says raising judicial vacancies post challenge. So this article mainly focusing on increasing of judicial vacancies and what are the challenges we are facing regarding this increasing of vacancies in judiciary. So if you see context, it mainly says that Supreme Court has said government's recalcitrant attitude. Government is not going for filling of these vacancies. So because of this attitude of government, it mainly affecting resolution of even important cases. So even important cases also we are not going to go for resolution them. So this is a statement which is given by our CJI, Chief Justice of India. He said that now it is a sorry state of affairs. There is a lot of ambiguity in the laws. We don't know for what purpose they are made. They are causing a lot of litigation and inconvenience to the people and as well as courts. So this is a statement which is given by our CJI. He said that what are the laws which are come up by government. So we don't know what are the purpose of that laws, but these laws are causing greater inconvenience for people and as well as courts. So if you're talking about some important details which are given in this topic, it mainly says that judicial appointments to Supreme Court, they have remained frozen since September 2019. So since September 2019 onwards, judicial appointments to Supreme Court, they have remained frozen. And if you see some details, it mainly says that the total sanctioned strength of judiciary, that is so total sanctioned judicial strength in 25 high courts, it is 1098. Okay, it is 1098. It is as per today's article data. And there is about 465 vacancies that we are seeing. And Supreme Court has been repeatedly conveying that government its growing alarm at judicial vacancies in high courts. And some of these high courts are functioning only with half of their sanctioned judicial strength. On an average, we are seeing there is 40% of judicial vacancy. So if you are talking about data regarding vacancies in courts, so total sanctioned strength in high courts, overall 25 high courts in country, it is 1098, but there are about 455 vacancies are present. So even Supreme Court repeatedly saying the government that there is increasing judicial vacancy, which mainly affecting the performance and efficiency of judiciary. So if you're talking about courts and what are their vacancy, at least we can say 40% of judicial vacancies are seen. So if you see this infographic, it mainly says that there is high courts have highest rate of vacancies. For example, Patna, which is having 60% of vacancies, Calcutta is having 55% of vacancies, Rajasthan, which is having 54% of vacancies, and Madhya Pradesh, which is having 49% of vacancies, and Andhra Pradesh is also having 48% of vacancies, right? So if you're talking about high courts with lowest vacancy, we can see in Kerala and as well as in Guwahati. So in other states like state high courts like Patna, Calcutta, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Andhra Pradesh, we are seeing high rate of vacancy that is seen. And now let us try to analyze what are the reasons for pendency. So first one is the government, it is the biggest litigant here. So even according to Economic Survey 2018 to 2019 data, which mainly says that so there is a tax revenues which is very much lessly allocated to this judiciary. It is just 4.7 of our GDP. Okay, next one is less budgetary allocation. So budgetary allocation for judiciary, it is just 0.08 to 0.09% of our GDP. So if you are comparing with other countries like Japan, Norway, Australia and Iceland, so compared with that countries, we are having very much less budgetary allocation for this judiciary. That is leading to one important cause of pendency of cases in India. And next one is practicing of seeking adjournments. So usually the lower courts, they seek adjournment and as well as in petitiorum. So it is also leading to pending of cases. And next one is lack of assessment. So when a new legislation is formed, there is no judicial impact assessment done by the government on how much burden that is going to be casted on the judiciary. So this is also one important reason for increase in pendency of cases. And next one is there is delay in judiciary appointment. So even collegium recommendations have been pending with the government for over more than several months or to a year. So because of this, it is one of the important reason that is leading to increase in vacancies. So because of increasing vacancies, that will lead to increase in pendency of cases. And this one is total sanctioned judicial strength is 25 courts is 1098, but there are 455 vacancies that are present. Right, so these are some important reasons. And now let us try to see what will be the impact whenever there is increasing of pendency and increasing of vacancies in judiciary. So that will lead to increase in burden of cases. So because of rising pendency, that will create excessive burden on ongoing or already presenting judges in courts. Sometimes they need to hear more than 1000 cases in a day. So this mainly reduces the average time which is devoted to case per day. And next one is overcrowding of prisons. So whenever pendency of cases which is increasing, then that will lead to increase in pendency of cases. So according to data which is given by National Crime Record Bureau, it mainly says that in 2019 there was 4.78 lakh prisoners. They are mainly present, and out of these prisoners about 69% of they are under trials. Right, so we already discussed about what are the problems they are facing by these under trials. And next one is it also undermines the right to life. So in famous case that is Husinara Khatun versus Home Secretary, State of Bihar case, Supreme Court said that a right to a speedy trial is a fundamental right. Right, so if there is no speedy trial, means what happened, it will mainly violates their right to life. That will leads that mainly seen in especially in case of this under trials. So pendency of cases, it is a clear violation of judgment itself. And next one is harassment of people. So pendency also causes harassment of accused and victim. They need to go for significant financial, physical and as well as mental stress for a year because of pendency of cases. And next one is it also undermines judicial credibility. So faith and trust of a common man in the judicial setup, it's mainly lost. And next one is unsatisfactory disposal rate. So due to this increase in pendency of cases, we can see the disposal rate which has stayed between 5 to 59% in Supreme Court and 28% in High Courts and 40% in subordinate courts. So these are some important things that you need to remember regarding this topic. And now let us see next article. Title says after quake kills 724, Haiti looks for survivors. So this article mainly talking about this Haiti earthquake. So if you're talking about context, it mainly says that because of powerful earthquake in Haiti. So because of powerful earthquake in Haiti, so that led to killings or loss of life of 724 people, mainly due to collapse of buildings. Okay, and as well as we can see there are many devastations that have happened here. So because of this, loss of infrastructure that is seen, and also even loss of life. And if you see some important details which are saying that, so at least 724 people, they were killed with this 7.2 magnitude of earthquake. And each one is churches, businesses, schools, homes, they crumbled in these earthquakes. And because of falling of these buildings and as well as some infrastructure, that mainly trapped hundreds of victims under rubble, and it left 2,800 people they are injured in this earthquake. And the heavy damage was reported in the center of the city, that is Germany, which is home to around 2 lakh people and composed primarily of a single story buildings in this area. So now let us try to see map of this Haiti. So Haiti, which is mainly located here. So this portion which comes under Haiti, right? So here we have this Port-au-Prince, and here we have Caribbean Sea, and here Dominican Republic, which is mainly sharing boundary with this Haiti. So if you're talking about some facts regarding earthquake, so what is the meaning of earthquake? So earthquake in simple language, I can say it is a shaking or trembling of earth's surface. So this shaking or trembling of earth's surface mainly caused by seismic waves, or also called as earthquake waves. So these seismic waves or earthquake waves, they are mainly generated due to sudden movement, or we can say sudden release of energy. That release of energy that can be seen in earth crust or upper mantle or intermediate or deep focus. Okay. So earthquake in simple words, I can say it is a shaking or trembling of earth's surface. So this earthquakes mainly caused because of seismic waves or earthquake waves. They are released due to release of energy or sudden movement. So this sudden movement can be seen in earth crust or even in upper mantle. So if we are talking about causes of earthquakes, we can classify those causes into 4 types: fault zones, plate tectonics, volcanic activity, and human induced earthquakes. So whenever there is any fault is there, so in that fault there will be release of energy that will lead to earthquake. And if you are talking about plate tectonics, here if you are talking about different type of plate movements, we can say here they will come together and they will move away from each other, right? So we can say convergent boundaries and divergent boundaries and transform boundaries. So because of these 3 plate movements, we can see earthquakes will be happening. Like we can say convergence, that means 2 plates are coming each other together. Divergence means they will moving away apart from each other. And transverse means they are sliding one above the other. So in these movements, we can see that will leads to earthquake. And next one is volcanic activity. Whenever volcano which is mainly bursting, sometimes it also triggers earthquake. And next one is human induced earthquake. So human induced earthquake mainly because of dams, okay, dams or any mining activities. Whenever we are going for burrowing into our ground or earth, so that will also leads to earthquakes. So now here you need to focus on what is this United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. So if you're talking about some facts regarding this United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction, so it mainly established in year 1999, and it is it has a dedicated secretariat to facilitate implementation of International Strategy for Disaster Reduction. So UNDRR, United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, mainly established in 1999. So it has a dedicated secretariat mainly to facilitate implementation of this International Strategy for Disaster Reduction, and headquarters mainly located at Geneva, Switzerland. And this office also mandated to serve as a focal point in United Nations system for coordination of disaster reduction, and also even to ensure synergies among the disaster reduction activities. And it is also an organizational unit of United Nations Secretariat. And here if you are talking about a strategic framework of this United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, so which has a vision mainly to substantially reduce disaster risk, which is mainly focusing on to reduce the disaster risk and as well as loss for sustainable future. And also it will provide some mandate to act as the custodian of Sendai framework. So these are the some important points that you need to remember. And now let us see next article. Title says 6,808 dead in rain cyclones in past 3 years. So this article mainly talking about fatalities in India. So nearly 6,800 people they lost their life over past 3 years, and these deaths are mainly because of hydrometeorological calamities. So what are the things which comes under these hydrometeorological calamities? They include flash floods, landslips and cyclones. And among all the states, West Bengal has recorded highest deaths among all the states. So this is context. And if you see some important details or data which is given here, it mainly says that country recorded 6,808 deaths. Okay, that is about 2,400 in the year 2018-19, 2,422 in 2019-20, 1,986 deaths in 2020-2021. So West Bengal recorded 964 deaths, and which mainly amounts 14% of deaths mainly due to hydrometeorological calamities. And according to ministry, it mainly says that these hydrometeorological calamities and hazards, they mainly include flash floods, cloudburst and as well as landslips. So if you see some more details, it mainly says that in most of the cases they are triggered by extreme rainfall events or cloudburst. So we already discussed about what is this cloudburst like, right? So I want to give you a small introduction. So if you are filling any balloon with water, suddenly you pin that balloon, okay, then what happens? Water will come like this, right? So that is called as, in short, cloudburst. Cloudburst, it is nothing but like that only. So within short period of time, we are going to have a heavy rainfall. That is called as a cloudburst. So because of extreme rainfall and cloudburst, we are seeing this hydrometeorological calamities that are happening. And these types of fatal landslip events are common almost every year, especially seen in areas like Himalayan states and as well as in Western Ghats and as well as in Konkan areas. So why West Bengal hit it most? Because so West Bengal mainly experienced 4 tropical cyclones like Fani in 2019, Cyclone Bulbul in 2019 and Umphan in May 2020 and Yas in 2021. So because of this series of cyclones, so it mainly affected or increasing casualties in West Bengal. So now let us try to see maps, okay. So this map mainly showing about cyclone prone areas. As you know, here this Gujarat area, and here in this Kerala coast and as well Tamil Nadu coast, in Andhra Pradesh coast, in Odisha and West Bengal coast. So these are very much prone to cyclones. So whenever cyclones are created in Arabian Sea, so it will be leading to some harm regarding this impacts in Maharashtra and as well as Gujarat area. And here whenever we can see cyclone which happened in Bay of Bengal, that will be having some influence in this east coast, right? And if you're talking about landslide hazard map, so in this area, in this Himalayan area, in this northeastern area along with Sikkim and even in this Western Ghats, so these areas are very much prone to landslips or landslides. So we already studied that recently in Himachal Pradesh there is increase in number of landslides that is seen because of climate change, impact of climate change. So these are some important things that you need to remember regarding this topic. And next article here is title says memories. So this memories, it is mainly regarding Partition Horrors Remembrance Day. So this article mainly talking about this Partition Remembrance Day. First let us try to see what is the central theme of this article. So central theme is remembering partition by providing Pakistan and Bangladesh would have been more apt. So here we are saying that remembering this partition by involving Pakistan and Bangladesh would have been more apt rather than remembering this partition, it is only for India. Okay, so now let us try to see this topic in a very great detail. So if you're talking about this partition, so this partition happened in year 1947. So in 1947 we went for this partition. So which partition? That is we divided, so this undivided India which is divided into India and as well as Pakistan in year 1947, right? So here if you see in this undivided India, okay, in undivided India this is the part, right? So after this partition we have this West Pakistan and also East Pakistan here. So after that, in 1971, we went for Pakistan Liberation War, okay, that is Bangladesh Liberation War, and this East Pakistan mainly converted into Bangladesh after this 1971 war. So now let us try to talk about data regarding this partition. So with this partition, so about 2 million people they killed in most brutal ways, and also estimated that 1 lakh women they kidnapped and raped, and more than 15 million men, women and children they are displaced during this partition. So for India in particular especially, it lost territory, that is exclusively cotton growing well drained and as well as good fertile soils, they are mainly lost by India, and even people are lost to West and as well as East Pakistan due to partition. So at that time violence was unleashed by the decision which mainly pitted Indians against Hindus, Sikhs and as well as even Muslims. So this was one of the important worst horror scenes mainly seen in states like Punjab and Bengal here. So if you're talking about in context of Pakistan, so Pakistan came up with this two nation theory, and this two nation theory which is mainly based on religion alone, and that Pakistan founder and that then Pakistan founder, that is Muhammad Ali Jinnah, fought so bitterly, and he went for disintegrated with creation of Bangladesh in year 1971. In 1971 they went for Bangladesh Liberation War and liberated or created Bangladesh in 1971. So if you're talking about what are the developments, okay, that we done, that is India done. So we went for many developments because of these developments. So it mainly helped to heal the wounds of partition. So India's success over past 3/4 of a century, and we went for growing of our economy and as well as we went for technological progress, and also we respected voice and as well as global stack. So because of all these development, now we have somewhat healed from the wounds of this partition of 1947. So here author mainly says what is the concern. So concern here is it mainly forces the nation to look back its traumatic time rather than looking ahead. So when we are celebrating this type of day, then this mainly forces the nation or people mainly to look back this traumatic time after rather than looking forward. So this is one cause of concern mainly expressed by author. So finally author says that Prime Minister reasoning for celebrating this day, it is mainly to remove the poison of social divisions, disharmony, and we need to further strengthen the spirit of oneness and also social harmony and human empowerment. So this is the idea behind celebrating this day, okay. So this day which is a welcome, but it has to be so we need to practice it every day but not on a day every year, okay. So this is the conclusion, and now let us try to see next topic. So before seeing this topic, I want to make a small announcement. So if you want to clear UPSC 2022, we came up with one excellent, highly beneficial and also highly economical course, that is current affairs package along with mains answer writing practice. So how this course will be useful to clear this UPSC 2022? So one thing you need to remember here is before entering into examination hall, you need to know at least 1.5 years current affairs for sure. And this is right time to join this course to cover this 1.5 years current affairs in a comprehensive manner. So why you need to focus on current affairs? Because in prelims, in mains and even in interview, you can get a questions from current affairs, and you need to master current affairs to clear UPSC. And next one is mains answer writing practice. Many students who are especially freshers, they ignore this mains answer writing practice. So they might be thinking like after completing NCERTs we are going to start that, or after completing standard books we are going to start that. But this approach will not work for UPSC. So whenever you are starting your preparation, on day 1 onwards you need to focus on this answer writing practice also. So after joining this course, we also conduct prelims test on every Sunday, and we provide a video explanation part. So in this with this course which is designed as per demand of UPSC. So finally I want to say one thing, please don't take this course as a choice. Try to join this course as soon as possible and achieve your dream of clearing UPSC. So details of this course which is given in description box, so please visit that once. And if you want to talk to me directly, you can call to this number 8074765513. Okay, now let's come back and let us see this article. Central theme of this article says that it was through its global interactions that country defined itself across its history as an independent nation. So this article mainly talking about what are the challenges we face in our foreign policy and what are the steps which are taken by different levels of government, okay, different governments that come into picture. So if you're talking about data which mainly says that today, now we are in troublesome waters of COVID-19 pandemic. So due to this COVID-19 pandemic, which is having some adverse effect on economy growth prospects, and also now we are seeing intensifying of competition with China in turmoil in Afghanistan. So as we know, Afghanistan, which is the nearest neighbor to India, and in Afghanistan what happened now, we are seeing control of government. The government of Afghanistan mainly resigned, and the control of Afghanistan which is under the hands of Taliban's now. So actually India invested large in Afghanistan. We don't know whether this, what will be the future of India and Afghanistan relations after this Taliban, right? So because of this, it is one of cause of concern, but here also there is increasing of influence of China that is seen in Afghanistan. So if you're talking about data regarding India, it is the 6th largest economy in the world, okay? So India, it is the 6th largest economy in the world, and also boost a well-trained and professional military, and it is also having a growing network of international strategic and economic partners. So we have signed a number of trade agreements with number of countries, and we are having free trade agreements with number of countries. And India, it is the 6th largest economy in the world, and we are also having professional military, right? So because of all these things, India's future too will remain intertwined with global affairs. So here we need to think about how India it is going to have a future relationship with other countries. So if you're talking about history of foreign policy, so India's first leaders, they opted friendly and as well as flexible relations. Our forefathers mainly come up with friendly and as well as flexible relations with US and as well as Soviet Union. So later on, initially received a bulk of development and as well as military assistance from the West to India. And what happened in mid-1950s onwards, Soviet Union extended support to India. And India also played an activist role in decolonizing the world. And India also participated in extending diplomatic and also security assistance to independence movements in Asia and as well as Africa. And even India sent military support missions for Korea and as well as Congo. So what is the first thing? So first here is our forefathers, they opted flexible and as well as friendly foreign policy with US and USSR, that is Soviet Union. So at that time we got good military assistance and as well as a good development from West. And later on mid-1950s onwards, Soviet Union extended support to India. So in this context, India also supported this Soviet Union, and India also played an important role in decolonizing the world, and as well as India provided some security assistance for independence movements that are going on in Asia and Africa. And even India also sending military missions to Korea and as well as Congo. So India's early efforts, they are arguably successful. So whatever the steps which are taken by India in early, it was very much successful, and also that led to consolidating of territorial gains, and as well as that also led to increase in economic growth of India. And also that steps were taken by India positioned India as a leadership role in post-colonial world. So after 1962, in 1962 we came up with the Indo-China War. So because of this Indo-China War, at that time Pakistan military adventurism also picked up, and that resulted to 1965 war, that is Indo-Pakistan War in 1965. And at that time of 1960s, we do not have proper food security. So we are in a crisis situation. So in 1960s, our government came up with this Green Revolution. So Green Revolution especially in areas like Punjab, Haryana and as well as Western UP region. So because of this Green Revolution, earlier we used to import food grains. Now we became food exporters. And in 1970s and 1980s, we came up with Indo-Soviet Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation, and we also came up with Bangladesh War, okay, Bangladesh War in 1971. So due to this Bangladesh War, it mainly altered or changed India's relationship with both superpowers, and that led to shifting of dynamics of rivalry with Pakistan. So at that time, what are the challenges we are facing between 1970s and 1980s? So the challenges we are facing is we are mainly going for some peaceful nuclear explosion, which is mainly not accepted by other countries. and we came up with annexation of Sikkim and competition with Pakistan over Siachen region, and there was a standoff with China, and there is intervention in Sri Lanka and as well as counter coup in Maldives. So not only these external challenges, we are also facing some security challenges internally. They include Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir. So in this areas there is external angle that we can see even in Tamil Nadu and as well as northeastern states. But at that time we come up with some strategy. So what are those steps? Your steps include, we came up with the resetting of relations. We came up with resetting of relationship with United States, and we came up with liberalizing the economy, and also pursuing this nuclear option were made, but outcomes were inconclusive. So mainly to deal these challenges, we came up with a good relationship with the US, and we came up with the liberalizing of our economy, and also we pursuing that nuclear options were made. So that will be helpful for outcomes. But what are the steps are taken, that is inconclusive. And after post Cold War era, so we saw number of other challenges. So other challenges include 1991 Gulf War resulted in balance of payment crisis. So after Cold War era, we have this balance of payment crisis, that is BOP crisis. Okay. And next one is India then adopted a range of reforms to liberalize the economy, but it faced more than the just economic turmoil. So here, whatever the reforms we came up with regarding this liberalization of economy, so we had some other impacts. And next one is 1909, later on Rajiv Gandhi assessment was happened, and in 1993 Mumbai bombing attacks, and there was insurgency in Jammu and Kashmir, which mainly presented more grave, that is grave means high, new security challenges to India. So at that time the foreign policy was during this PV Narasimha government. So he came up with advent of the look east policy, and also he made good relationship with association of Southeast Asian nations. And next one is we also came with establishment of diplomatic ties with Israel, and also we came up with signing of a border peace and tranquility agreement with China, and we also come up with initial military contact with US, and as well as we came up with preparation of nuclear test. So these are some important steps which are done during this PV Narasimha Rao government. And later on Atal Bihari Vajpayee government came into picture, and this government mainly focused on developments. Okay. And next one is he also focusing on conducting of test series. Okay, test series in 1998. And he also came up with negotiation of a return to normal relations with other countries. Because of this nuclear activities we are doing and nuclear test we are doing, so we got a bad image, right? So because of this, we started again renegotiating with other countries to ensure normal relation. And next one is we also came up with concluding of important set of agreement, that is Chinese agreement of 2003. And later on Manmohan Singh government came into picture, and this Manmohan Singh government tried to resolve the outstanding questions of India's nuclear status. He mainly focused on eliminating barriers to dual use of technologies and as well as equipment. He also focused on export controls, and also he focused on robust defense relationship with the US. So these are some important steps that are taken by this Manmohan Singh government. And next one is in 2008-9 we entered into again global financial crisis, right? So due to this global financial crisis, we have a slight change in approach. Okay, and at that time we went for institutional reforms, financial lending, climate change, and as well as sovereignty. And later in 2013, China began to test again border and as well as undermine the Indian interest in South Asia and as well as Indian Ocean region. So further we saw standoff across this LAC, that is line of actual control at Doklam and as well as Ladakh. So even recently we are seeing there is standoff across LOC, and there is some type of disengagement that is seen in Gogra area and as well as Pongyongso Lake area. And India opted to boycott Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, that is BRI. Okay, so we are also came up with the rising of some barriers for this Chinese investments, and also we banned some technology of Chinese, and we won many apps recently, right? And next one is we also consult more closely with other balancing powers in Indo-Pacific region. And even mainly to counter this China in this Indian Ocean region, we came with many alliances with countries of sharing boundary in this Indian Ocean region, right? And recently we also came with the Quad. Okay, so these are some efforts which are mainly taken by government, but in 2014 and 16, so there were Pakistani provocation that was seen, and that mainly resulted to bad Indo-Pakistan relations. And further, whatever the steps were taken, that are mainly reinforced by the terror attack at Uri and Pulwama. So even though many efforts are taken by government side on Pakistan side, so we are mainly freezing Indo-Pakistan relations because of there is attacks like Uri attack and as well as Pulwama attack. So this article says that what are the objectives of this India. So if you're talking about objectives of India, there are mainly 4 objectives. First one is we are mainly focusing on development. Second one is regional security. Third one is balance of power, and fourth one is shaping of international consensus. So these are 4 important objectives of India. So if you're talking about finally conclusion, Athar mainly says that as India enters 25th year of independence, there are plenty reasons for cautious optimism that need to be placed in the world. So one article in page number 1 says that 25 years, so in the next 25 years, we are mainly focusing on development, right? So now it is 75 years, so in rest of 25 years, we need to go for development, and this next 25 years will be very, very important for developmental activities, right? So in these conditions, whenever we want to achieve our dream of next 25 years, it will be crucial for development. So we need to focus on this COVID-19 pandemic, and as well as we need to focus on growing international competition, and we need to take some steps mainly to make middle income countries to be transformed, and we need to secure our polity, and as well as we need to come up with a proactive shaper of international norm. So these are some important gist. So this is gist of this topic. So these are some important articles which appeared in today's newspaper. I already said other 2 articles in page number 6, right? That is about cooperative federalism and coercive federalism, and decreasing of cost of petrol by ₹3 in Tamil Nadu. Okay, so you need to also refer these 2 articles and try to make a small notes regarding that. So by this we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. And don't forget to enroll to this current affairs package. And please keep your suggestions in the comment box. Thank you.